Which potential trades could rock the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft? Welcome, football fans, to another BR NFL Daily. Today, I'm going to discuss which first round trades are most likely, some hypothetical situations that could go down on Thursday night. I'm Mitch. You can find me at TheBottomLineView on YouTube as well. And I'm here every Tuesday and Friday. And today we got some interesting trades. You know, I look at this draft and I say, I don't really feel like there's a ton of action. I mean, when's the last time we didn't have a trade pre-draft? Feels like a long time ago. So, and almost to the point where there are mock drafts where everybody has a consensus top 10. It's getting kind of outrageous. So maybe the NFL is going to flip the script. Maybe we're waiting for something to shake up the draft. And we're going to talk through those situations right now. So hop in the comments. Let me know which trade you think is most likely, what trade you would like to see your favorite team perform in the first round. These are specifically first round trades. Keep that in mind. Let's start it off with a name that I think is going to be actively pursued in the first round of the draft. And that name is Ashton Jeanty. Okay. Jeanty is an incredible prospect, right? An incredible running back. One of the best tackle breakers that I've seen and anyone else has ever seen at the running back position. And because of his explosive ability, his 3-down capabilities, and just the fact that this draft doesn't have a ton of incredible playmakers, I think he will be coveted. The first trade that I think could go down is Jeanty going from the Broncos to the Broncos. That's right. So we have a trade between the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton's going to call up his old friends in New Orleans and try to move up in the draft into the top 10 to select this monster of a running back, Ashton Jeanty. The trade for me would be the Saints moving back intentionally because they want to pick up more draft picks and potentially even get into a better position for a quarterback a little bit later in the first round. We're going to talk about this. They're going to get pick 20 and a future first round pick. And we're going to get into the reasons why the future first round pick is what I decided upon, because initially I actually went with, other picks in this year's draft, right? And then we have pick 9 for the Denver Broncos. So it's pick 20, essentially 2 first round picks for the Saints this year and next year. Okay. So first, why does it make sense for the Broncos to move up? The Broncos really don't have a lot of needs. The Broncos' biggest needs are wide receiver and running back, in my opinion. Besides wide receiver and running back, they have their future quarterback. They have low-key one of the best offensive lines in football. They have one of the best interior defensive fronts in football. They have 2 10-plus sack artists on the edge. They have the defensive player of the year at corner. They just signed Hufanga and Greenlaw at safety and linebacker. They have very few weaknesses on their roster. So using more capital to trade up, which Sean Payton has been prone to do throughout his career, makes a lot of sense. Meanwhile, the Saints have a ton of needs. The Saints have needs at potentially long-term quarterback with the Derek Carr situation. They have offensive line needs at left guard and right tackle potentially. Ryan Ramczyk just retired. They might need a long-term running back. They have needs at corner. They have needs on the defensive line, maybe long-term linebackers. So there are a lot of needs for the Saints. Picking up more capital and trading back makes sense. Now, why I went with the future first is because this year's draft class of quarterbacks is not the most certain or impressive. So having 2 first-round picks in next year's class could become extremely valuable, especially if the Saints, which a lot of people think are going to be a bad team this year, are picking in the top 10 of next year's draft. So if the Saints somehow have 2 first-round picks in a valuable draft class potentially next year, they could take a swing at a long-term quarterback next year, or maybe even this year, right? So that's where it makes a lot of sense to me, because initially I had the Saints, getting a second round pick and a fourth round pick as well, instead of the future first, right? But I decided on the future first because I feel like that would give them the best opportunity to land a future franchise quarterback. That being said, at pick 20, they could still land an offensive lineman. They could still get one of the edge rushers in this class. They could still get one of the top corners in this class. They could still get a quarterback if they so choose, because I don't think that Shedeur Sanders is going inside the top 10, and he could potentially fall out of the first round. So if they want him at pick 20, he could be there. I also think that if they like Jackson Dart, which apparently they do, they could pick him at 20, right? And, they'll have another first round pick for next year to build the rest of the roster around him if they like him enough, right? They also have a second rounder too that's relatively early. So they have a lot of options here if they choose to trade back, while the Broncos can choose to trade up, give Bo Nix an awesome lethal weapon. And Sean Payton loves to use his great running backs, whether it be in the screen game, in the run game, in the receiving game, right? So I just feel like this would work for both sides extremely, extremely well. And it would allow the Broncos to jump from just a playoff team to maybe potentially legitimately an AFC threat with a difference maker like Genty. And they could keep their second round pick this year to add a wide receiver, which would be even more lethal. So that's the first trade in this video. I think it makes a lot of sense. Guys, let me know what you think in the chat. Before we get to our second one, shout out to the people in the chat. Random comment here from DB says Genty is really good, but he's no Jamal Charles. That's random, but okay. E. Phillips says Eagles. Looks like some of the chat's a little cut off there at the bottom for me, but yeah, Eagles are not involved in any of my trades, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say that. I guess I don't know what he says. All right, let's get to the second one. We've got potentially another trade idea here for Genty as well, because I think a lot of buzz is happening right now that he could be going a little bit earlier than we would have suspected. There are teams in the top 10 and even like inside that top 12. If we were going to go through the teams inside the top 12 that could potentially pick Genty, right? So we kind of know who the top 3 picks are going to be. At least we assume, right? It's going to be Ward, it's going to be Hunter, and then it's going to be Carter or a trade. And we'll address that in a second. At number 4, it feels like it will be the Patriots selecting Campbell. He is a very heavy favorite. But if the Patriots choose to not stick and pick, they could trade this selection, because at number 5, Jacksonville is rumored to maybe like Genty. Number 6, that is the most commonly mocked landing spot for Ashton Genty, the Raiders. At number, you go through, okay, so 7 and 8, no, because that's Carolina, that's the Jets, right? Then 9 is the Saints, that's a no. But then at 10, the Bears, and then at number 12, the Cowboys, all could be teams that are interested in Genty. But the important place, if you really want Genty and you're a team like the Chicago Bears, you would have to jump the Raiders at minimum, right? And you might have to jump Jacksonville as well after the recent reports. So that's why I have the Patriots trading back with the Chicago Bears from number 4 to number 10. And in this case, the Patriots would pick up an extra second round selection, the 39th overall pick, and the 10th overall pick for the 4th overall selection in this year's draft. That would allow the Bears to jump the Raiders and jump the Jags in order to take a superstar running back, which is one of the missing cherry on tops of their team, right? You look at Chicago, and this is a team that, just like the Broncos, they're a couple pieces away from being a really interesting team. Because honestly, the Bears, as long as Caleb Williams works out under the tutelage of Ben Johnson, the Bears don't need a lot. Their offensive line is actually now really solid after the 3 additions they made to their interior offensive line. Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, and Jonah Jackson. They have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. They have Cole Kmet at tight end. They have a really solid defense, and at every level, they don't really have a hole, right? So maybe they could go defensive line at number 10 and add a young, youthful pass rusher. Maybe they could look to some other position like tight end. Maybe they really like Tyler Warren or something. But why not make a swing? Why not go for it if you're the Bears and upgrade over DeAndre Swift and have a powerhouse runner like Ashton Genty, who could be the Jahmyr Gibbs for Ben Johnson, right? Not a similar comp type of player, but could be just as special, right? Could be just as good. Could enter that top 5 running back conversation where Jahmyr Gibbs belongs right now, right? So that's why I have the Patriots getting an extra pick, which they certainly could use. And it feels like at number 10, the Patriots could still land a useful player at one of their biggest positions of need, whether it be a wide receiver or it be a tackle. So if they could maybe still get Campbell at number 10. If you're thinking about it, right? Will Campbell, he is going to be what's the word? Divisive. That's the word. A prospect, right? Because he's got that short arm problem, which I think people are not going to be a huge fan of in the NFL draft in the top 10. And some people view him more as a guard than a tackle. So if Will Campbell truly is the Patriots' target, they might actually be able to move back. Because at number 5, Jacksonville's not going to take Campbell, right? At number 6, there's a small possibility the Raiders would take Campbell, but I think they would rather have Membu, actually. And I think the Raiders might pick Membu, but their right tackle is a much bigger need than their left tackle. Colton Miller has some rumors, though, so keep that in mind. Number 7, you have the Jets, who need a right tackle over a left tackle. So, again, I think they would favor Membu, and then I think they'd probably rather have a tight end over Campbell. Then you look at, okay, the Panthers, they don't need an offensive lineman. The number 8, who am I missing here? Number 9, the Saints. The Saints could pick Campbell. That's kind of the one where maybe that would happen. Right? But the Saints have so many other needs, so it's not like a lock. But that being said, Patriots pick up another pick, and even if it's not Campbell that they get at 10, they could pivot to Banks, or they could pivot to McMillan, or they could pivot to somebody else. Understood? Makes sense? Then they have an extra second-round pick where maybe they'd be able to pick an Ursary or like somebody in the early second round, right? They'd have 2 early second-round picks. They might even be able to jump back into the first round and pick somebody. So that allows the Patriots a lot of versatility here. And I love the fit with Genty with the Bears, because I think behind that offensive line, man, he'd be a 1,500-yard running back in year 1. Like, he'd be a true difference maker for an offense that needs a little bit of pressure taken off of Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams' best games last year were when the Bears were able to set him up with some play action, some protection, and some screens and some quick, decisive throws, and allowing the run game and the defense to keep some pressure off of him, and not having Caleb constantly dropping back and getting into his issues, which are maybe holding on the ball too long, playing too much hero ball, things like that, right? That's the best way to have a quarterback grow in your system, is just give him a little bit at a time, right? A little bit at a time. So I think, yeah, so he'll definitely be there at number 4. Genty's definitely going to be there at number 4. And he's going to go somewhere probably in the top 8, because somebody's going to trade for him. And I think the Broncos could do it maybe. I think the Bears could do it maybe. So that's why I have those 2 possibilities thrown out there, the Patriots and the Bears. And like I said with the Patriots, I think at number 10, wide receiver or tackle options will be there. And then in the second round, wide receiver or tackle options will be there once again. And there's even a small rumor about the Patriots liking a Jalen Walker. So maybe Jalen Walker could even be a player that they would pick at number 10 if he's still remaining too. So just throwing that out there as well. All right, let's get to the third trade that I think is a possibility. And this is a different take on the draft. This is a hypothetical. I think that the Giants are more than likely to take Abdul Carter at number 3 because he's that damn good. I think he is a cross between Micah Parsons. He's got a little bit of Von Miller to him. I think he is a stud, right? He is going to be, in my opinion, he is by far the best pass rusher in this class. He's going to be a top edge player in the NFL. His explosiveness, right? His bend is rare. I just think everything he does, and then you throw in that ferociousness and that like no regard for his body as well, I feel like he's going to be a stud. But what if the Giants want to move back in the draft, collect more selections, and maybe, just maybe, they want a quarterback instead of an edge rusher where they're already at a surplus of players? They have Brian Burns, they have Kayvon Thibodeau, they've got Dexter Lawrence in their pass rush, not an edge player, but in the pass rush. So it's not exactly their biggest need. So maybe the Giants look at their roster and say, let's trade back. Let's get some extra assets. A team is going to be desperate to come up to number 3 to take Abdul Carter because there's a clear tier gap between Carter and the rest of the prospects in the draft. So one team that has a ton of capital and one team that could very much use a Abdul Carter is the San Francisco 49ers. And there's a mention of being undersized. Well, Micah Parsons doesn't appear to be undersized in the NFL, but I will throw this out there, okay? I will say that a team like the Niners that rushes from a lot of the time a wide 9 alignment, I don't think it matters that you're undersized, right? I don't think it matters. We just saw, Nick Bonito, who's not even in a similar system. He's a guy that was kind of looked at as undersized. We saw in the playoffs what Smith was able to do, Nolan Smith was able to do in Philly. In the NFL, it's actually a little bit easier if you're put in the right position to be able to succeed. But my trade here is San Francisco getting up there to number 3. They're going to send pick 11, their future first-round pick, and a third-round pick at number 100. Now, I struggled with the future first-round pick or like a second-round pick or something like that, but I think this would be the most fair and most realistic. And we know that the Niners have been willing to give up their future first-round picks for players that they really like in the past. So I think it's fairly likely that this could happen as well. I wouldn't be shocked if the Niners did make a move for like Mason Graham as well, or like some sort of impactful front 7 player. The 49ers at their core have been known for Kyle Shanahan's offensive scheme and their defensive pass rush. But if you look at their depth chart right now, all they really have is Nick Bosa. Imagine what they could do with Nick Bosa and Abdul Carter and how that would transform their defense under Robert Saleh. That would make their defense one of the most dangerous pass rushing units in football, just by a singular player, right? They could go in this draft and pick at 11 and get Mike Green or Shamar Stewart. But what if those guys aren't quite, because if the Niners view Abdul Carter like I view him, where it's like this guy could be a top 10 edge rusher in the NFL, maybe top 5 for the next 10 years, then that could be a big difference between a guy that might be good or has a ton of traits like Shamar Stewart or has a really interesting bag of tricks like Mike Green, could be a very good pass rusher, but there's uncertainty there. There might be character issues with the Mike Green or things like that people are worried about, right? So, or maybe they would go with a defensive tackle at 11 or whatever. But what I'm saying is essentially, would Carter be more valuable to them than all these other picks that they would potentially use in this draft on the defensive line? Because they need defensive tackles. They need edge rushers. They need multiple, right? They need multiple. But one player that's another Nick Bosa level tier of player makes you so much better, right? It's the quality over quantity approach. Now, when it comes to the Giants, why would they want this? The Giants, they might just view it as like, we have too many pass rushers. If we pick Carter at number 3, then we're probably going to have to trade Thibodeau for like a 4th round pick or something, or 3rd round pick maybe at most. Like, I don't know what they would really get for him, right? So they're maybe looking at it, let's just trade this pick and we'll get extra capital if we trade this pick compared to if we trade Thibodeau. We're still fine with our pass rush, right? He's not like, Thibodeau's not Carter, but we still have Brian Burns that we paid a ton of money and things like that. And we could move back in the draft at 11. At 11, we could still get whatever we really want, whether that be a quarterback, whether that be a wide receiver, a corner, a defensive lineman, an offensive lineman, like really whatever we want, because they could use any of those things, honestly. So yeah, it would just bring a lot of options. And then future in the draft, they would have extra capital next year where they're likely, again, like the Saints, picking inside that top 10, where they could use multiple 1st round picks to maneuver for their quarterback of choice as well. Okay. So there's a lot of reasons that could happen. You guys saying Carter is not good is just ridiculous. You guys are crazy. Okay. The Browns, I think Henderson could go in the 1st round, guys. Giants might be in the market for Warren too. I kind of like Johnson personally, but I guess I could see that. Yeah, that's a possibility. I wouldn't rule that out necessarily. They might just pick the best player that would be there at number 11. So whoever that may be, maybe Warren if he's not gone already. Maybe even Loveland, who knows? But so again, I think Carter is a perfect fit for the Niners because of the style of defense they play, a perfect complement for Nick Bosa, and would take their defense and them back into the contender conversation, which currently they're not really in. Okay. Luke is trolling. All right. That's fine. We'll accept the trolling. Okay. Let's get to the live chat right before we go to the next one. We've got Go Knights Go in the chat. Go Vegas Knights. How do I know it translates? Who are you talking about, Jimmy? Strong says Giants would be stupid to take basically a second next year to skip out on a top tier pass rusher. I'm not sure it's going to be a second next year. I mean, the Niners could be, I mean, I don't even know if they're a lock to make the playoffs. I mean, they're in a really difficult division. They lost a ton of pieces, right? They didn't make the playoffs last year. They only won 6 games. So I don't even know if that's going to be a bad pick necessarily. Now, if they do get Carter, then you would think the Niners would be a pretty darn good team. But I would also say that is the value of taking Carter for their team right now what they truly need to be successful for the long term? That would be my question. Because ultimately, if they don't have a quarterback, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how many pass rushers they have if they don't have a quarterback, right? It doesn't matter that the Giants pass rush was so amazing in their Super Bowl runs. If they don't have Eli Manning, I know that Eli Manning in 2007 wasn't exactly elite, but if they don't have that level of quarterback, they're not winning anything, right? So you need a quarterback at the end of the day too. Let's get to the next trade, which is our 4th trade here. The Minnesota Vikings and the Buffalo Bills making a trade in the late first round. The Vikings don't have a second round pick from what I'm aware of. The Bills have multiple. They also have multiple 4th round picks. Buffalo might be desperate to jump some of their AFC contender foes to be able to get a secondary playmaker. Well, the Vikings are so stacked that I feel like they could trade back into the first round and feel comfortable with who they get at number 30 and then pick up some extra draft capital later in the draft. So my trade is that the Bills get pick 24 in order to take potentially Malachi Starks, the safety, or maybe Hairston, the cornerback, or their choice of cornerback, right? So corner or safety, in my opinion, for the Bills at number 24. And then the Vikings picking up pick 30, 109, and 132. And guys, these trades are all backed by the trade value chart as well. I try to get as close to the numbers as possible, but that's how it would look. I don't think this would be too big of a move for the Vikings. They could still pick up somebody that would help them at safety potentially, maybe somebody that could help them at guard at 30, maybe somebody that could help them at corner. Those would be the positions I'd look for at the Vikings. And the Bills, they have that extra draft capital to where they're getting aggressive. They're in their Super Bowl window. This might be the best opportunity Josh Allen ever has to win a Super Bowl coming up because the Chiefs coming off a Super Bowl loss, Super Bowl hangover, very likely. The Ravens, are they still going to be able to be there? Where the Ravens didn't really improve as much as Buffalo, in my opinion, this offseason so far. So the Bills might have that upper hand after beating them in last year's playoffs. So the Bills might be the favorite in the AFC. If they could add that cherry on top at safety, like a Starks, or, add a CB2 on the opposite side of Benford, then I feel like that could be a big bonus for them. So yeah, I mean, pretty simple. One team wanting more picks that doesn't have a lot of capital, and one team that's wanting to be aggressive, getting a difference maker player for one of their biggest positions of need, right? I also think that Starks would be the biggest target here because if he slips past, let's say, the Bucks, I feel like he's very likely to go in that range, right? So I think he's also, it's going to be interesting to see which safety goes first. I'm not exactly sure, but throwing that out there, I feel like safety or corner for Buffalo is extremely likely. So them trying to get the one that they truly want, I feel like is also likely at the end of the first round. All right, let's get to the 5th trade for the first round, the 5th hypothetical here. And this one's pretty fun. The Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs. This would happen at the end of the first round. The Browns have pick 33. Okay. So that's the first pick in the second round, which is usually a valuable pick. The Chiefs probably are looking at rather a guard, a tackle, or a defensive lineman. There will be plenty of choices at the back end of that first round / the early portion of the second round. While Cleveland might be in a arms race to get Shedeur Sanders if he falls. So thinking about the draft, if Sanders does not go 3, which is highly unlikely, highly unlikely, if he does not go 9, which we're also hearing the Saints like maybe Jackson Dart over Sanders. So probably not going to go number 9. If he doesn't go to the Steelers, who might be signing up Aaron Rodgers shortly, then where does he go? Right? Where does he go? To the point where a team might be enticed to move up into the first round just a little bit to get that player, plus the extra contract control that first round pick brings. Right? So the trade would be very easy, very simple, not much at all. It'd be 31 for the Chiefs for 33 and 179. That's all it takes to move up 2 picks into the first round to secure your quarterback, okay, of the future potentially. Now, the Giants could also be interested in this move because the Giants are sitting 1 pick behind the Browns. So maybe they get into a little bit of a negotiation contest here, right? Also, there could be, like, the Saints could want to move back into the first round, especially if they look to move back in the first round, or, look to move back in the first round. That's a very convoluted sentence. So what I said there was, if the Saints look to move back in the first round, they might look to move back into the first round. Okay. Then you also have, who else could use a quarterback? The Steelers, right? We've already mentioned. So there could be also, like, would the Raiders, like, I don't know, the Raiders, like, long-term, Jets, long-term, right? Thinking about those. So Cleveland could stick at 33 and pick, right? Maybe they like Shuck a lot. Maybe they pick him at 33. Maybe they like Jalen Milroe a lot. Maybe they like Sanders a lot. Maybe they don't think anyone is going to move ahead of them, but maybe they do. Maybe they have a little bit of fear. And Cleveland has a ton of draft picks, right? Cleveland has a lot of draft picks this year. They're in the top 3 for draft capital in this draft. So they could use, they just flip a 6th, flip a 5th, get up there a couple spots, get into the first round, get that extra contract, that extra year, right? That 5th-year option, that extra control, and then also beat your competition to the punch and just flip with the AFC champs to get your quarterback in the first round and make a splash with Hunter and Sanders on day 1 of the draft. That would be pretty awesome, in my opinion. That would be a lot of fun. So I'm rooting for this personally. While the Chiefs could still get to 33, pick up a guard, pick up a tackle, right? Pick up a defensive lineman. Those are the main areas for them of need as well. So, and there will be choices there. Defensive tackles, I think there'll be a couple at that spot. I feel like, the partner in crime for Chris Jones, an eventual replacement. I feel like there will be an edge rusher for the partner in crime of George Karlaftis. There's going to be plenty there. And then I think they would probably rather go guard than tackle, but tackle's a possibility. Yeah, I think this could happen. Something like this could happen. Cleveland, the Giants, the Steelers, the Saints, one of these teams could move into the first round. Who knows? Maybe a team like New England moves into the first round, not for a quarterback, but maybe for like a wide receiver. If they go with an offensive lineman, maybe someone like that. That's really starting to get aggressive and doesn't have that many needs remaining, but they have like a couple huge needs, and they're trying to secure those picks. So I think teams trading into the first round could happen. Okay. Our final trade of the video is, this one is a mix-up here. This is a little bit of a curveball. We're going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trading up from number 19 to number 14, dishing their 3rd-round pick, 84th overall, to the Colts to select Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama, okay? So the reason for this is Tampa does not have a lot of needs. Tampa has big needs at linebacker, especially considering the long-term future of Levante David, and at safety, in my opinion. Otherwise, sure, they could add a tight end. They could add maybe an edge rusher, but they signed Hassan Reddick. So to me, a team like the Bucs, that's like borderline contender in the NFC. They're a good team. They're seen as the best team in their division. They're seen as a potential contender. They need one or two more pieces. Meanwhile, the Colts could move back because if Tyler Warren is gone, let's say Warren goes number 7 to the Jets or he goes number 10 to the Bears. At number 14, right, they might choose to move back because they could potentially still get Colston Loveland at 19 and still get a tight end, or they could go after an offensive lineman, which they also could use, right? So I think they could use an offensive lineman as well and get one at 19, pick up an extra third-round pick. We've seen the Bucs make these subtle first-round trades in the past. I remember one with Tristan Wirfs where they were able to maneuver and get Tristan Wirfs in the draft, right? So the Bucs and Jason Light, they're savvy in their approach at getting the guy that they want. And I think Campbell is probably the number one guy on their board for not only linebacker, but for the need of the addressing that position. Because Tampa was terrible at covering the middle of the field. Campbell's got great range, great instincts, IQ and zone coverage. He's got the length to be able to break up passes. He can rush from the edge and be used as a hybrid pass rusher, linebacker type as well, which Todd Bowles covets because he blitzes a ton. So I could see that being a great fit too for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And for the Colts, like I said, don't look out for the Colts. A lot of people think they're going to pick a tight end. I think offensive line is also fairly likely. But I would say that one of the tight ends will be there at 19, in my opinion, as well. Because I don't think that Loveland is, if Loveland does not go, like if the Colts could pick him at 14 if they want. But if he is a guy that they like, I don't think the teams behind them are going to pick him, right? I don't think Seattle might be the most likely, but Seattle needs offensive line so bad that I don't see that happening. Cincinnati re-signed Mike Gesicki. Cardinals have Trey McBride, who had 100-plus catches last year, right? So you look at, and Atlanta needs an edge rusher. So you really think about the guys or the places that a tight end could land, and you start to think about, the Colts could trade back and still get some extra capital for their roster, right? All right, let's get to the chat and any comments that I haven't read yet. Sebastian says the Cowboys need to find a way to trade down in round 2 or 3 for a 4th, depending on how the player falls. Yeah, I mean, that could happen. We're only focusing on first round moves, but I definitely think the Cowboys should be very much, I think even round 1, they should consider trading back. I would say if McMillan is gone by 12, because I think they would pick McMillan potentially. If he is gone by 12, I think they could trade back and still get Golden. So I would potentially think about trading back if you could in the first round if you're the Cowboys, because I think the Cowboys need offensive line, defensive line, nickel corner, linebacker. They need a lot of different things in this draft, right? But yeah, that's an interesting one. Thank you guys for joining the chat. If you enjoyed this video, you can check me out on my YouTube channel, The Bottom Line View. It's on YouTube, putting out mock drafts, putting out draft coverage, everything in between for all 32 NFL teams. You can also like the video or Gronk spike the like button if you enjoyed it here on Bleacher Report, and enjoy the draft, guys. It's been Mitch. This is BR Daily. Now we're going to recap before we go. Let's quickly go through each trade just in case you missed it. So first, we've got the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints making a move. Sean Payton making the call to his old team to jump up to get the Bronco to the Broncos. Ashton Genty would be the selection here, while the Broncos give up pick 20 and their future first to get pick number 9. The Saints move back to maybe get a quarterback or at least some ammunition for a future quarterback, okay? The New England Patriots and the Chicago Bears, the Bears might really like some Genty. This could be the Jahmyr Gibbs for Ben Johnson in Chicago and really provide an engine for their offense and somebody that could take pressure off of Caleb Williams. The Patriots might also look at number 4 and say, I don't know who we're going to pick. Is it going to be Will Campbell? Could we get Will Campbell a little bit further back in the draft? Let's pick up some extra draft picks to be aggressive potentially at the end of the first round to get the wide receiver and the tackle in day one or night one. So the Patriots, they could use a couple different draft picks. So I went with number 10 and number 39 for number 4, allowing the Bears to jump up and pick Ashton Genty. Then we've got the San Francisco 49ers making a crazy move for Abdul Carter, trading up from number 11, using a future first-round pick and their third-round pick, number 100, to get up to number 3 to take Abdul Carter, to partner him up with Nick Bosa and bring back that destructive defensive line led by Robert Saleh, okay? The Giants could also move back, use the extra capital in the future, right, to get a quarterback in the future, or even at number 11, they could select a quarterback at number 11 instead of picking a position that they already are well addressed at. Then you have the Minnesota Vikings and the Buffalo Bills. Number 24 for 30, 109, and 132. The Vikings give up their pick and move back to get extra capital, which they don't really have in this draft, while the Bills are able to ensure that they get a playmaker in their secondary. The Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs make a late first-round trade where the Browns jump into the first round to number 31, giving up 33 and 179 to get a quarterback of their choosing to partner up with Travis Hunter, making it 2 first-round picks, preferably Shedeur Sanders, because that would be a lot of fun. And the final trade would be the Bucs moving up in the draft to ensure that they get the best linebacker in the draft in Campbell. They move from 19 to 14, adding a third-round pick, number 84. The Colts move back. They could still pick Loveland or an offensive lineman at number 19 and ensure somebody that can help their offense. There it is, guys. My first-round trade possibilities. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch. Peace.